It was only my great-grandmother and her 3 sons who were traveling because my great-grandfather was already here in the United States.
Oh, okay.
And he was, he had actually left Russia, went to New York, came back to Russia, wanted to take his family, but my great-grandmother's father, who was very wealthy, wouldn't let her leave, even though she was married and had 3 kids. And only after he passed away did they allow them to leave. My great-uncle Eli, when they started out, he was 13 and a half, almost 14 years old. And back then, between World War I and then the Russian Revolution going on, they were so afraid of his being conscripted into the army and, maybe never seeing him again, or maybe his being killed. So they disguised him as a girl the whole trip until they were out of Russia, so that he could get out. So it was quite a saga for them. They were thrown in jail for several months because they didn't have passports, so they were deemed enemies of the state. And they were in, as a family, they were in one cell together, which probably kept them together as a family. They were released by the communists. So my grandfather, while he didn't believe in communism, had a soft spot in his heart for them because they saved his life. He told the story about how it was so cold that he once put his hand on a metal bar and it took 2 men to rip it off because it froze to the bar. For breakfast and lunch, warm water that was supposed to be tea. And if you didn't drink it in 5 minutes, it became ice water. And then they would get a piece of moldy bread and maybe a piece of meat for dinner. And that's how they survived for 7 weeks, I think it was, they were in jail. And that was in Vladivostok, Russia. Then they made their way to Harbin, China, which is in Manchuria. And then from Harbin, they made their way to Yokohama, Japan. That's why they were delayed, and my great-grandfather was here in New York. A couple of times, he had no idea where they were. He didn't know that they were in jail. He didn't know they were in China. And he would get a letter, and he'd have to cable money. And then they made their way to Japan, and they were in Yokohama, Japan, and they saw a sign in Yiddish, and they met a rabbi named Goldberg who helped them as best he could. And then the Japanese government actually helped them out, gave them a house to live in, until my great-grandfather could scrape enough money up, and they finally were able to get a boat. They had to go steerage from Yokohama, Japan, to Hawaii, and then from Hawaii to San Francisco. They took a train to Chicago. Actually, they were detained in San Francisco until my great-grandfather can come from New York to San Francisco to vouch for them. And then he took them to Chicago, where he had a brother, and they finally got new clothes. And then they went from Chicago to New York, and they settled in the Bronx.